Welcome to Viewpoint on ILTV, where we bring you leading voices in the Middle East and beyond. In this special, we're taking you inside the Israel-Gaza war to hear from stakeholders, thought leaders, and decision makers. I'm Emily Schrader, and today we're speaking with the CEO of one of the most well-established and respected Jewish organizations in the United States, Jewish National Fund USA. Today we speak with Russell Robinson from the JNF headquarters in New York City and explore how JNF USA jumped into action after October 7th and what the organization, through his vision, is doing to help rebuild and empower the residents of southern Israel who were brutally targeted on October 7th. Let's start off with your story. Tell me a little bit about your background and how you came to be actually the youngest ever CEO of JNF USA and took this organization really to new heights.
So thank you, Emily. I was the youngest. It was a couple of years ago. But I grew up in a small town. And so I'm kind of a different kind of professional that would be in the Jewish communal world. I grew up in the middle of Judaism, El Paso, Texas, where maybe if you counted everybody who didn't want to be counted, there was 2,000 Jews. But it really had a great foundation about who I am today. In some ways, I learned about what I did not want to do in the Jewish world. I grew up in that bar mitzvah era that you got bar mitzvahed and you never would show up again because everything about leading up to it was painful. But I said to myself at that point that if I was going to be Jewish, I was going to have fun being Jewish because it just was something that wasn't part of that institutional learning. My grandfather was a great inspiration for me, my parents. But it was only until about 16 when a friend took me to a BBYO convention that I saw Jews having fun. And I never realized that that really was what the Jewish world is all about. And I got into business. From business, I accidentally got into this nonprofit business. But when I got into it, I always said, being in it, I was going to make sure that we were no longer Oy vey Judaism. It's just the greatest way to turn off our Jews, and it's not reality. We're a winning people. We're a winning group. People have written our obituaries, but we keep winning. And I believe in that in all my heart, and I think it's so important today, especially after October 7th, and we'll get into that, but something that when I got to Jewish National Fund 26 years ago, it was an organization in which had a lot of greatness to it, of history, but it had become a little stale. And we were able to build a movement here that today is over 600,000 donors, and our fastest growing part of our donor demographic is our 22 to 40-year-olds. So we've changed from, your grandfather's Oldsmobile to today's real future of the Jewish community.
I was going to ask you, when it comes to leadership, your vision for this organization has really been turning a new page for the organization. It's been lauded internationally, I think, for the programs that you've implemented. You have, the World Zionist Village. You have literally countless other programs in JNF that you've pushed forward that appeal to religious, to secular, to teenagers, to young adults, to all different groups. And as you mentioned, you're really doing a lot of work to target, 18 to 35-year-olds in a way, engage them in a way that hasn't been done. What does this leadership mentality that you bring, what does it mean to you? What does leadership mean to you? And how does it shape what you've done and what you're doing with JNF?
So leadership is about people getting off the couch and getting into the game. And I think this is a lot about who the Jewish community has to be and who we have to be as leaders. First, I'm going to go back to the Oy vey. If I keep telling you that we're a losing team, and you got to be concerned, we're on the brink of annihilation. Oh, and who knows what our future is going to be. And by the way, nobody likes us. And by the way, we're hated by everybody. Join the other team. Why would you come to the game? Why would you want to participate? So part of leadership is, first off, understanding that it is not selling just because you want to do fundraising, and it's easier to do fundraising on, quote, oh, those terrible poor Jews and we're on the brink of annihilation. It's not true. Let's sell to people the reality to be part of a team. Leadership is taking the risks. Nonprofit allows you to risk far greater than business. I was in business. We had to plan, because I had partners. Every investment that I did on business was about making a profit. Now, businesses fail, but the risk factor is a lot less. In a nonprofit, you get to take the risk factor. Now, you've got to have the skin and the drive to make it happen. But if you don't, think about cancer research. 98% is failure. They don't plan on failure, but that allows you to do it that businesses wouldn't invest in. And being part of the land and people of Israel and being part of our Jewish community is taking risks for tomorrow. So you mentioned the World Zionist Village. It's the largest project happening in the Jewish world. But we believe in all of our hearts that the Jewish community of tomorrow is looking for this new conversation. Not about right or left or religious or non-religious, Israel or diaspora, about shared values and common destiny. And that is attractive to all. And as a leader, you have to put yourself out. You have to get people to stand up. I believe in all my heart, soul, everything, that the world is made up of good and bad. And the reason bad wins is when good doesn't fill the voids, because we're sitting on the couch. It's tough to be a leader. Everybody wants to push you off the ladder. You know. There is nothing like being a great influencer and being a great leader like you, and everybody is ready to attack you. Not just your enemies, even the ones you don't think are your enemies. But you keep doing it. Because climbing the ladder makes people follow. You have a unique position amongst yourself that allows people to follow you. And if you don't do that as a leader, if you don't put yourself out, shame on you. And so leadership is about taking those risks. You're given the talent. Don't sit on the sidelines. Take it, move it forward. And at Jewish National Fund, we have taken that leadership of an organization, Zionism. We don't hide from that word. By the way, it's a big Z here. We use the word all the time. I find it unbelievable that people, the greatest word, the greatest movement of the Jewish people, about coming back to our ancestral soil, and we allow others to steal the word Zionism from us. Zionism is a great movement. Shame on us for not selling it, talking about it. And Israel is a great uniter, not a divider. But let's remember the beautiful romantic stories of Israel and not get caught up. I don't think Abraham was a Likudnik or a Labor. I don't think Moses was a part of Yair Lapid's party or not. That's who our people are, not the political movements.
I think that's a really, really great point, and it's interesting that you brought up as you were speaking about leadership. It's something that's very much lacking in the Palestinian side, and in a kind of a strange way, Zionism as a civil rights movement is actually something that should serve as an example of what any minority group can be for themselves, rising up, taking responsibility, stepping forward for the interest of your people and for the interest of yourself through, in the world, in the context of the world. And if we had maybe a different Palestinian leadership, what a different reality that could be for them too. Because the story of the Jewish people is something that's so resilient, that's truly inspirational. So I think this mentality of approaching it in a positive way that emphasizes all the remarkable things about Israel, about the Jewish people historically and today, is an example. And it actually speaks to, I think, some of the work that JNF is doing with the minority communities in Israel too, which I will get to in a minute. But first, I wanted to ask you something that often comes up on the anti-Israel side when it comes to JNF. JNF is sometimes demonized or criticized for being this sort of colonialist entity that conspired to steal Palestinian land. Now, we know, historically speaking, that that's simply not true. But I'm wondering what your answer is to these types of criticism that JNF sometimes receives.
So first, I think it's a great that people, if you're noticed, even in the negative world, means you're doing something. So I take it as a badge of honor in some ways. But let's take the story. We talk about young leadership today. We talk about influencers and people make a difference. Theodor Herzl died at the age of 44. 44. He was the first JNF future. Now, I want you to imagine a secular Jew, never had been bar mitzvahed, living in the golden age of the Jewish world at the time, found and saw anti-Semitism like he never saw before and realized that no matter how great it was for the Jews in Europe at the time, that unless we returned to our ancestral soil, we would never be. That our future was there. So what did he do? He organized the Jewish National Fund. They sat around and talked for 5 years at the Zionist Congress about we should have the land because it's ours biblically. No. They sat around and talked about legal rights to have that land. We could show ownership and ownership. No. Instead, they came up with the Jewish National Fund to repurchase the land of Israel. And I use the word repurchase because land was sold to us. It was under the Ottoman Empire. People have to know just basic history. Where did the land come from? Purchased. By the way, not great land. Land that had swamps and malaria in the north. Places that were flooded, that nothing was growing on. Read, Mark Twain was in Israel in the 1800s. He wrote a whole book about his tour through the Holy Land. And he said, I don't know who God gave this land to, but they should ask for a refund. That's Mark Twain. He talked about the land being devoid of trees or vegetation. Wow. So Jewish National Fund repurchased the land. Now let's talk about the trees. Do you know how they came about? I want to say that we were great environmentalists, that we're great foresters. It was by accident. Under Ottoman law, you had 7 years to either grow on your land or live on your land or lose it. So the Eastern European Jews brought the pine trees from Eastern Europe and planted them because pine trees did not have to take care of them. And it was a way to hold on to the land which nobody was living on. But 260 hand-planted trees later, by the way, why do I say hand-planted? Because Jews were coming without education, with no job. And you would see trees that were planted in places like in Mount Moriah, places that you said, why are trees planted in the middle of this rock? Do you know why? It was an employment opportunity. You would fill up a truck with tree saplings. And so to give dignity to the Jews that were coming from North Africa and Arab countries, you would go and get a paycheck by just planting a tree in a terrible location. So it's a romantic story that we have to tell about how did we repurchase acre by acre of that land? And then it wasn't just about repurchasing it. How did we make love to that land? How did we grow on that land? Where did we build communities? And think about it, and it deals with today with the Israel envelope and what happened on October 7th. People have to realize, do you know when the first kibbutzim was established there? 1943. Get the numbers? 1943. The first kibbutzim was established there from Jews that came from Brazil, the Jews that came from Egypt. And they were sent there by the Jewish National Fund, Karen Kayemet, to be farmers. By the way, none of them were farmers. They did a good barbecue. None of them were farmers. They became some of the great agronomists in all of Israel because they took a desert and they started to make it bloom. In 1948, Ben Gurion had heard that the Negev may not be part of the partition plan for the land of Israel. So they established tower and stockade communities down in the Israel envelope. Established 7 of them. In 1947, in Yom Kippur at midnight. Now, why tower and stockade communities? It's a great story called legality. Under British law, which we were under then, If you built a tower and a stockade, you could not tear down the community. It was a legal community. So that's where the word tower and stockade, people should learn this great romantic story, these people that started. By the way, where did they find to build the 7 communities? You want to talk about the Israel spirit, the maybe Hashem, whatever you want to call it? They hired a man with a water wand for $3,500 who pointed at 7 locations in the desert and said there's water under there. They trusted him. That's where they put the 7 communities.
Was he right?
He was right on all of them.
Wow.
Now, those are great stories, and tell those stories. This is not land that was occupied. This is land that was repurchased, and not only repurchased, it is about loving the land. And I hate to go on, but I'm going to, because I tell people all the time, you want to debate the issues of legality of land, we have a legal land dispute. Okay? It's a legal argument that the Palestinians or whoever want to have. But in 1948, we both had a broken down tractor. A drop of rain does not know the borders of Israel. By the way, the best rain comes from the Jordanian side, the west side, comes down the mountains and rushes to the Mediterranean. The finest soil is on the west side and the Jordanian side, not on the Israeli side. So we both had a broken down tractor. We have a land dispute. What did you do? What did I do? I built my house. I built my school. I built my lawn. I built my farm. I built my family. I grew a community. I started building high tech. I built universities. I built places for people with disabilities. I have some of the finest work with people with disabilities in the world during a war-torn area. I brought in Ethiopians, the first nation in the history of the world to bring blacks in as citizens, not as slaves, in the history of the world. We brought in 800,000 Jews that came from North Africa and Arab countries who had lack of education. And we taught them and we built a lot of issues, a lot of mistakes. What did you do?
JNF has developed incredible infrastructure in the north, in the south, and they have even worked with a lot of Israel's minority communities, as of late, Druze communities, Arab, both Muslim and Christian communities, and built programs to integrate them with the Jewish communities. How does that fit with JNF's vision and with your vision for the future of the State of Israel?
So it's always a great question. I always want people to go to Israel just once, who want to talk and complain and make comments. So there's forests all over Israel. There's parks all over Israel. You go to any forest during the weekend and you find thousands and thousands and thousands of people hiking, walking, having picnic in our parks and our forests. And by the way, nobody is saying Muslim, Jew, Druze, Bedouin. They're all enjoying the land and people of Israel together collectively. So let's tell some real stories here, not false stories about Israel. We took on the issue of water in Israel 26 years ago. Israel was facing a catastrophe. A catastrophe. Google it. You will see that every article written then said by 2020, Israel and the Middle East will be out of water and the great wars will be fought over water, not over land. So what did the Jewish National Fund do? We started talking about what people weren't talking about, recycled water. What about the ingathering of Jews? What about poor Jews? What about orphans? What about brink of annihilation? We're talking about sewage water, 250 reservoirs, and turning water and recycling the use of every drop of water, mayim l'chaim, water for life. And Israel today, 90% of its water is reused. Spain is number 2 at 27%. Every drop of water used, so that we kept the Zionist dream alive.
Now imagine if that was the case in Gaza.
By the way, imagine that was the case anywhere. Yep. Anywhere. Where you could grow the most beautiful strawberries, tomatoes, pomelos in the world on recycled water. And we proved, by the way, that the American philanthropic community was sophisticated. That we didn't have to sell these grandiose, terrible stories. We could tell wastewater. And we did it $300 million later. And then we set a vision of 500,000 people moving to the Negev. It was 60% of the land of Israel. It only had 6% of the population. Beersheba was 190,000 people, losing 3% per year. You would lose the land because Mother Nature would take over. And just to tell people, Mother Nature is the greatest force of the world. Desertification, for every mile of desertification that takes over by Mother Nature, it takes 7 to 10 years to move it back. So we had to move population. First off, we proved that population produces water, wastewater. So we took away that edge. Second, people said, well, didn't Ben-Gurion say, follow me? He did, but Israel was a country of 3 million. Now Israel is growing. So Jewish National Fund took the drive of Blueprint Negev to moving people down. But to move people down, you have to work with all the people that are there. The Bedouin population is in the Negev. There is 400,000 Bedouins in the Negev. They are Israeli citizens. So the largest project in the Bedouin community in anywhere in the Negev is a Jewish National Fund project called Project Wadi Atir, which we bring economic opportunity to them. We bring tradition back to them so they learn how to utilize traditional Bedouin methodologies for cosmetics and for medicines. So we bring environmental, how to make sure that they're not grazing their sheep, which is not an ideology, it's a methodology. But if you graze your sheep and they drink poison water, you lose the product. We teach them about economics and we teach them about agriculture. Now, that project helps bring opportunities to the Bedouin community. They're looking for jobs. Our Lauder Employment Center in the Negev has helped the Bedouin community to jobs. When Google is trying to find employees, they're not looking for Jewish employees or Muslims employees or Bedouin employees. They're looking for employees that meet the criteria. And so our Lauder Employment Center opened up in the Negev to find jobs for people because we found that businesses were saying there was nobody to hire. And students from Ben-Gurion University who said there was no jobs. So we took the two circles and brought them together. We created housing sites by a loan program working with communities so they could build the infrastructure because that's the way it works in Israel. And over 2,000 homes later have been created because of Jewish National Fund's innovative thought process of bringing people down the Negev. And we work to not leave people behind. So we work with a group called Makom Communities, young leaders who have moved into these communities, sort of like inside kibbutzim, to make sure that seniors are being helped, the children are getting education. So as we're moving new population in, we're still bringing the old population up. Creating changes in a 7-mile river walk in Beersheba. If you haven't been to Beersheba in a while, go and see our 30-acre lake in the middle of Beersheba. We were always making a joke, if you want to move to Beersheba, buy a boat. Now, buy a boat. And our 7-mile river walk will have water in it. We have a 7-mile tayelid with a 13,000-seat amphitheater. And in Beersheba, 20,000 new housing sites have been improved. Beersheba, a town of 190,000, losing 3%. Today is 251,000, the fastest growing city in Israel, and soon to be home of the World Zionist Village.
It's truly remarkable. I know also from my own interviews and content that I've done, some of the JNF work in the north in particular has done a lot of work for empowering women from minority communities, specifically Druze women, Arab women who are business owners, who are getting opportunities as a result of JNF programs. And it's really remarkable to see how this organization that's about restoring the land, the Jewish land, historically Jewish land, has actually brought together the Arab population, which are an integral part of the state of Israel. I want to turn a little bit to something a little bit more heavy, October 7th. I would like to hear from you what changed for you personally on October 7th? And then, of course, what is JNF doing to help these victims of some of these communities? I know you guys have quite a few programs that you've been implementing, working with survivors, with children in the South, I think also in the North with some of the evacuated communities. So share with us a little bit about that.
So I was in Israel on October 7th. I arrived in the morning with my wife. It was going to be a program in Jerusalem, a program that we're going to. And I'd started getting notices on my phone that rockets were coming, and I started sending out to all of our people in the Israel envelope, because these were not people that we sort of knew. We've been working with these people for 20 years. This was our family. One of them was Ophir Lipstein, the mayor of Shar HaNegev, who I had sent a text to, who sent me an emoji of a hand praying. 30 minutes later, he was dead. We immediately started setting up a situation room, not knowing what was happening, but we had been working with these communities before, Emily. We knew that there was going to be some sort of evacuation, and we had planned for it. Not for this. We had planned for all the others. We knew the people in the Arava. We knew the people in Ramat HaNegev, in Mitzvah Ramon, Gush Etzion. So we already knew where people could go. So we started immediately on the ground, putting Zooms together with people. We were getting instantaneous from the people in the Israel envelope what was going on, and we were replacing them to different places. 3,700 people to Mitzvah Ramon. Over 3,200 people to Ramat HaNegev. Mitzvah Ramon is a town of 5,700 people. It almost doubled its population in 24 hours. There was one community in the Eshkol region who called out to us on the next day and said, we want to move together, 391 people. We knew where to move them, and within 24 hours, 391 people moved to a place in Gush Etzion with new sheets and new pillows, with families taking them in. Now, none of those families and none of the people that we put in the Arava Valley, both in Eilot and in the Arava, had ever dreamed, or Yoracham, or any place that this was going to last this long. So now you have people who've opened up their homes for a week, and they're being told now it's 4 or 5 months. So our situation room was going 24 hours a day because this was our family. At the same time, you should know, we had 160 kids at our Alexander Muss High School in Israel. A war is happening, and now we had to take 160 kids from Alexander Muss High School who were there for a semester abroad. It's one of our great programs, and I'll want to talk about it. These are 16 and 17-year-olds, and I want to tell you just a story about them. We had to bring them from Jerusalem the first night. Nobody knew what was going on, if you remember, on October 7th, where terrorists were. So we had to get buses. They were already in bomb shelters in Jerusalem, bring them to our Hod HaSharon campus. We transported them with all the fears that we had. Had to teach the kids about going in bomb shelters. Fed them a lot of pizzas. The next day, started classes with them, but we realized, listen, things were happening, and we were losing teachers to being called up, madrichs and so on. By the third day, it became evident that we were not going to be able to keep the school open. So we were doing things with the kids like they wanted to be part. They packed over 3,500 packages to go to hospitals. Shampoo, we had stuff shipped in, and they were working. And you should have seen these young people. You talk about leadership. We had a logistics manager, and we had a manager of writing notes, and we had a manager of packing, and this was all them doing it. And then I'll tell you one of the unbelievable stories. When we had to tell them they had to go home, believe it or not, everyone was in tears, fighting their parents. You sure heard the phone calls going on the side. But we knew we had to send them home. Now, we had to send them home through Italy because, remember, flights were being canceled, and we got a charter flight to Italy, and we had to tell these kids who were there for 18 weeks that you only could take one suitcase. Now, some brought 3. They didn't leave their clothes behind. They washed them. I almost tear every time. They washed them. They folded them. because we told them we were going to have evacuees utilizing our school. They folded them, they marked them, girls, socks, sizes, and put a note, we are with you. 16 and 17-year-olds. If you don't think our Jewish world is great in tomorrow, go meet our Alexander Muss High School kids. So we were working with those evacuees every day. We took them in our school. We had 170 at one time. We had to learn how to be social workers, how somebody from Kiryat Shmona doesn't necessarily talk to somebody from Ashkelon. We learned a lot of things. We're serving food. Then we had classes. It wasn't something we were set up to do, but we did it. And we were working with the evacuees, 800 diapers going to Mitzpeh Ramon per week. Mitzpeh Ramon has not a grocery store. So you're moving people down there. And how did we work? We didn't wait for them to call us. Even today, this morning, 7 o'clock in the morning, I'm on with our situation room. They're on every day with the evacuees everywhere and been talking. And then 1 week into the war, we started building a plan called Livnot Biachad, build together. It was for the day after. Now, people were criticizing us at first, saying, how can you talk about the day after? We were taking care of them, providing the food, providing necessities for their existence today. But we knew if you don't believe in tomorrow, why are we doing this? So we're building that plan for tomorrow. And by the way, that plan is coming to light sooner than we thought. So in the next 2 months, 20,000 people are moving back to the Israel envelope. And Jewish National Fund is moving them back. Because the two most important things in disaster program is trust and bringing people back home. We have the trust because they're our family. And we're bringing them back home. And what are we doing? We're redoing their parks, even those communities that had no destruction. We're redoing their public schools. We're building classrooms right now because the classrooms that they have to use in the Eshkol region and Shar HaNegev aren't available to them. So we're taking one of the kibbutzes that had old classrooms, and our volunteers, we have over 200 volunteers going to Israel every single week. We started that. We're going to have over 2,500 volunteers volunteering in Israel. Nobody's doing that. But we're doing it because we're not only going and picking fruit. Yes, we are. We're painting these new classes. We're going to paint people's homes if they want it. We're going to put new trees in their yards. We're going to put new benches. We're going to clean up their parks. They're going to do their public spaces and new furniture and give them the reveal moment. They can't take the circle of pain away, but it could give them that opportunity to sort of take that shower, get dressed, and start the day tomorrow. Because they know that we were with them yesterday, we're with them today, and we're going to be with them in the future. And that's our big signature projects that we're also working on, building the finest sports facility in the entire area of Israel that's going to be in Shar HaNegev. New opportunities, $1 million of scholarships for music scholarships. They killed our children at a music festival. They're not going to stop us from playing music. Every child in the Israel envelope who wants to play music will have a scholarship available to them. Everything we're doing is about turning it to the envy of Israel. So soon, there's a lot of housing sites we're doing there as well. If you want to live in one of the greatest areas of Israel, they used to call it 95% heaven, 5% hell. We're going to turn that percentage to 100% heaven. That's the Israel.
B'ezrat Hashem. I think also one more thing that JNF has been really remarkable on in this war in particular, just in recent months, is working with the children of the Gaza envelope who can't go to school suddenly, people who have lost parents, people who have lost siblings before their eyes. Some of these children who overnight were orphaned, I know JNF has been doing some, they transferred hundreds of them and set up classrooms, correct? I think it was...
Classrooms, look, we also found out sometimes because we were working on the ground, I'll tell you one of the great stories of classrooms. I'll use Mitzpeh Ramon, 3,700 people. You're trying to get something normal going, so what's the greatest normal thing you could do is start classrooms. So everybody, all organizations were running around talking about we need to bring teachers in, we're going to build classrooms and bring teachers in. And we decided to have a Zoom call with all of our leaders, both from the Arava, from Shar HaNegev, and from Eshkol and Shar HaNegev and Sderot. And we started saying, listen, let's look at how we're going to do this in an organized fashion. And I always remember her name was Noah Zera. I'm going to give a shout out to her. She said on the call, I know you have 3,700 people in Mitzvah Ramon. Have any of you done a survey to find out how many teachers are there? And all of a sudden silence was on. I always said the men were silent, the women were shaking their head yes, because it took a good head to. And all of a sudden we found out there's 39 teachers. So we were able to open up schools quick. But if you're running, sometimes you could spend the money and not necessarily make the impact. So schools started operating every single place. In Ramat HaNegev, they came to us, and the mothers said, listen, the accommodations are small and nice, and we appreciate everything you're giving for us. We wish we had a place to cook. So we built a huge outdoor kitchen. And mothers are coming there and cooking. I say mothers, I hate to be that way, but it was, I was waiting for the fathers to show up. And they got, barbecue grills that they turn into ovens, and they're cooking. And it's giving them whatever normal is. And you got to remember, in the north, we don't know what tomorrow is. I'm giving you a story of what's happening in Israel envelope for the next 2 months. Is the war began in the north? Is the war ended in the north? But I have to tell you, there's nobody living in Kiryat Shimon and all those places up there, and we're taking care of them as well. And we're building bomb shelters that they did not have for their schools, so when they come back. And so we're building not only a Livnot B'Yachad plan for the Israel envelope, we're building a plan for the northern part of Israel called Reimagine. Reimagine so that the Israel North becomes the Tuscany of Israel, the place that you want to move to. We have a land of Israel. 60% is the Negev, 17% is the Galil. It's not a part to give away.
Absolutely. I think when it comes to Israel's future, I'm wondering for you, what do you see as the solution? I know that's a broad question, but what's the solution in Gaza, and what can the diaspora Jewry, whether organizationally like JNF or as individuals, what can the diaspora do to support Israel in building, to livnot beyachad, to build a better future together?
Zionism and connection to the land in Israel makes us strong. The IDF is the strongest army in the world, and they'll protect, and you get all the criticisms they want for October 7th and whatever else. But the IDF is the people of Israel. So I always like when people say, well, guess what? It's the people of Israel. And
incidentally, also Arabs and Jews together. A lot of people forget that, yeah.
And that's the IDF. You want to be a strong Jewish community? We need Israel in the diaspora as much as Israel needs the diaspora. The strength of the American Jewish community, the strength of Paris Jewish community, France, of England, of anywhere else, is today because of Israel. So let's get straight. Our strength is based upon having a place called Israel. People don't want to remember that there was a ship called the SS St. Louis that came to the shores of the United States in 1938, and we could muscle up 5 congressmen and senators to come to try to get them to disembark. And they went back, many to the death in the gas chambers. Today we have in Israel. Our breath in our chest is stronger because of that place in Israel. Don't let people talk about it not being the unifier of the Jewish community. That's the other thing. Go to a JCC Maccabi game every summer here in the United States. They have them Florida this past year. There's always a group from Israel that comes. And I say, you want to do a focus group? Watch what happens. These are not people that are synagogue goers, and you could say Zionist born. Most of them were from public schools and so on. And when the Israel team comes marching in, the whole crowd cheers. And the kids can't wait to rip the pins off of the Israeli players. Our school at Alexander Muss High School in Israel, 51% of our kids come from public and non-Jewish day schools. 70% of their parents have never been to Israel. And they're coming for 18 weeks of full education and 4,000 years of Jewish history. You want to give strength to the Jewish community tomorrow? I can't tell you what our enemies need to do or don't need to do. They have to come to their own solutions. I know as a Jewish people that our strength against our enemies is far beyond the IDF. Far beyond the IDF. Because our borders in Israel, our strength in Israel, and I'll use the Arava, You know what protects the Arava? Pomelos and figs and dates. Not F-16s and Merkava tanks. We plant, grow, and live. We choose life. We're not going to be allowed to be identified for October 7th. We're not even going to be identified for the Holocaust. Those are moments in life that we have to know and never forget. But our identity is our strength of our Jewish people and our connection to the land and people of Israel. And the more we do it, the stronger we are to our enemies.
Well, I think that's an excellent way to end. I want to thank you so much for your time and for all the incredible work that JNF is doing, both prior to October 7th and, of course, after this tragedy as well. Thank you, Russell.
Thank you, Emily.